Hi, welcome back to the stage one of API Days Dubai and Middle East day two sessions. We are starting the segment on digital transformation in aviation. As we all know, the past 2 years have been tough on quite a lot of industries, and travel and hospitality has been one of them. Let's hear the views from three of our experts in this segment on various aspects of aviation, how the digital transformation is happening in that, what are those different things that is happening, industry specific API driven initiatives in in this market, and then what are those benefits coming out of that. Joining us is Anne Sederhar, travel technology specialist at Explore Tech. She will be talking to us about understanding the challenges and benefits of NDC. Hi, welcome, Anne.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm Anne Cederhall. I have an extensive background in the airline industry with a focus mainly on retail, e-commerce, shopping, merchandising, but also, of course, NDC and One Order. I worked as a consultant for Lufthansa Group for 3 years, implementing all the direct connects for them. I have worked for about 15 plus airlines, and I've also worked for industry players such as ATPCO, Amadeus, and Pros. I currently work as a consultant, both with Explore Tech, based out of Dubai, and also with LeapShift. I also am an instructor with Aeroclass and teach the course and training on airline retail, which is being launched very soon. A few weeks ago, I attended the Airline Industry Information Payment Summit in London. And Simon E., he said that 6 years ago, he couldn't even pay to be on a panel or to, nobody in the industry really wanted to speak to Simon about alternative payment methods. It's taken me, I would say, well over 6 years when asking the question, what is the end purpose and the goal of NDC? The airline industry is full of acronyms and buzzwords, and we keep hearing in the industry that we must implement NDC, but we never really discuss the why so much. So today, I'm going to take a stab at explaining the background and the why, and perhaps the why not. I'm going to go through the challenges and the benefits of NDC. I don't have very many slides for this presentation. I just have a summary slide for you to look at on the challenges, and then on the benefits, and then on the main stats. So the airline industry is one of the most traditional and conservative industry. And my personal opinion is that the airlines are very safety focused, and they should be. Safety is what matters most in the airline industry. But it also has a tendency to make them very risk averse and very cautious about just about everything. And now I would say that the best companies or the best airlines that I have seen, and the most successful ones I've seen, are the ones who divide their airlines into an operational unit and then into a business-driven unit. That is typically what works best. So coming back to what is NDC, and I do wish I'd had $1 for every time I've been asked that question, because it's been a few. It stands for New Distribution Capability, and a word of advice, never use the word new. It's been introduced, or we was introduced 10 years ago as an attempt to modernize communication standards in the airline industry. And the goal was to replace EDIFACT, which had been used since 1986. But EDIFACT is actually still widely used in the industry, and adoption of NDC is still very low. It's approximately under 10%. So what was the reason for introducing a new standard? I would say that the internet changed the airline industry, and the low-cost airlines started selling to the public at scale beginning in 2000. They proved that it was not only possible to lower distribution cost by not using so-called intermediaries. They're also called GDSs, or global distribution systems. But the low-cost airlines also introduced the concept of unbundling and bundling fares, meaning that they started to sell seats and bags separately. And in the past, before the low-cost airlines started to do this, this was always included in the ticket. So if I had a ticket that didn't have a lounge access, there was no way I could buy a lounge, if it wasn't included in my package or whatever. The strategy to unbundle has been hugely successful. Today, the value of selling what the airline industry typically refers to as ancillaries, I personally call it, I can also call it retailing. The value today is 65 billion US dollars. And pre-pandemic, that was 93 billion US dollars. So when the LCCs became so successful in doing this, the network airlines became very challenged. And the first airline to sort of go down the path of introducing bundles, or what they call branded fares, was Air Canada. This was back in 2007. And there were no standards in the industry for seats or for bags or anything like that. And Edifact wasn't able to transmit large data sets. And so in 2012, so exactly 10 years ago, IATA introduced NDC, and XML was the chosen language. And then you say, fact is still widely used and the adoption of NDC is still very low, under 10%. Why is that? And how does that matter? Well, so NDC is just the standard for airlines only, and for flight-related sales. And it's as a standard on its own, it's not a product. It's not a sales channel. It doesn't make stuff magically happen in any way. And of course, it's not new. You will hear those who say that the goal of NDC, and this is probably the closest to the truth, was to modernize distribution, including making personal and relevant offers to the consumer, and also to reduce cost. That brings me back to my question, what is the purpose of NDC? Isn't that to enable retail? So there are not very many network airlines who have introduced NDC APIs in the sense of meaning a direct channel selling to resellers without using an intermediary GDS. Today, we rarely see better content, but we do see cheaper fares for the resellers. Like I said, still after 10 years, there are different interpretations on what NDC means. When you talk to people in America, they always say, oh, it's about selling bags and seats and additional content and products. And in Europe, it has become, the purpose seems to be to offer cheaper fares to the resellers. But it's still, the adoption levels vary extensively, both by airlines and resellers. And it's good for you to remember that NDC is typically not used by low-cost airlines, and it's typically not used by airlines' e-commerce systems, or their websites rather. So coming back to the challenges, and I'll move on to a summary slide for this. I would say it's been a bit like the Wild West out there. Everything and anything has been called NDC. without necessarily having anything to do with it. So there are still gaps in the standards, stuff that hasn't been addressed. For instance, an example is commission on point of sale. NDC is managed by IATA, and there are 300 member airlines of IATA. And it is a standard for airlines only. It's not for hotels and cars and insurance companies, etc. To become certified as a provider of NDC, it also comes at quite a high financial cost. And you also need to be recertified at a cost. And my personal opinion is that this has impacted startups in a negative way. It's a bit like the chicken and egg situation. Do you invest the precious money you have as a startup to be certified and recertified without having any customers? Or do you spend the money on what generates revenue? So the airlines that have implemented the NDC solutions are using different technical platforms with varying functionality. This means that in reality, Airline A may offer refund and change of reservation, and Airline B may not, right? I've yet to see an NDC airline providing significantly better functionality and content in their NDC channel. I would say that the exception is probably BA, who are headed in that direction, and that is a really good sign. We need more of that. You'd be surprised, especially in this group, how many airlines typically don't have their own API. The reasons for that can be either commercial, that it's the contract with the airline IT provider, or it can be technical, they don't have the resources. There are few airline IT providers. In the industry, we call those PSS, passenger service systems, and for a very long time. That's typically 10 years. Also, the airline IT systems own the distribution companies, the GDSs, the global distribution companies that I talked about. These GDSs still use Edifact and old structures like PNRs, passenger name records. So the systems behind the scenes still look the same as they've done for the last 30 or even 40 years. Of course, there are airlines who are totally on top of all of this and who control their API and use and actually retail and have moved into an order structure rather than an old PNR structure, but they are few. Another interesting fact about this industry to be aware of is that airline data is typically controlled by third parties, such as OAG, ATPICO, and PSS systems, and airlines have to pay in order to use their own data. Another surprising fact is that airline IT systems, the PSSs, provide the e-commerce websites to the airlines. So that means that it's mostly the same tech for everyone. And agile is not really a word that springs to my mind. Whenever there is a community, agility isn't really what's on top of mind. And this is the whole airline digital platform that we talk about. So I'm also talking about the apps, etc. Actually, in a fairly recent study by Dig in Travel, 85% of airlines are unhappy with their websites. So you see there is a great potential here. Airlines know that there is a lot of money on the table, and their way to make money is to expand the offer. Airline profit margins are very low. They are at sort of 3 to 5%. But of course, retail profits are very high. I mean, they range from anywhere from 5 to 40%. And in 2020, believe it or not, 4 airlines in the world, Wizz Air, Spirit, Allegiant, and Viva Airbus, made more than 50% of their net profit from selling ancillaries and other products. But to retail, they need to move into the API landscape and use retailing system based on order management. So is it all about airlines? Of course not. It's about resellers like travel agents too. So a travel agent can, of course, as you know, take many shapes or forms. They can be OTAs, online travel agents. They can be metas. They can be TMC, travel management companies. They can be brick and mortar, but that's actually irrelevant. Regardless of the type of seller, it is not cheap to implement NDC. And this really has to do also with that agents typically rely on the technology provided by the GDSs, and which is also very PNR centric. And in order to manage different content from different sources, they also need to update and modernize their systems. And they need systems to integrate with different APIs. And that's not provided by the GDSs. So same as with the airlines, the technology to use for reservations are very old structures. And to move towards retailing and to modernize selling is expensive for the agents. And they typically hang around and wait for the GDSs to fix the problem. But those who are willing to invest, they will most likely benefit greatly, because they too, same as airlines, need to retail in order to sell better content like hotels, cars, events, and much more. A shocking fact that I wanted to share with you is that travel management companies only book hotels of their corporate customers. Well, these customers probably don't sleep in tents. What this means is that they book outside of the travel agency. So the opportunity to grow revenue for resellers is huge. So I'll just summarize on a slide here what the challenges are, what I just spoke about. So it's the low adoption, it's the gaps in the standards, it's for airlines only, so it's not for all those partners. It is also the cost, and then it is that airlines implement differently, have chosen different platforms. So let's move on to something that is a bit more on the positive side of it, because regardless of what the challenges are, what are the opportunities with NDC? And I'll actually move on to the slide so you can see the summary. Of course, a standard is great to have if you can. It simplifies and reduces cost. In the beginning of NDC, I naively perhaps thought that it would be great if I could, as an airline, say, here is my NDC API, right? It looks exactly the same as any other airline's API. But this hasn't really turned out to be the case. But if we can move towards this, that would be a really, really good thing for the industry. But we can make progress regardless whether there is a common standard or not. So what's much more important is to modernize the technology and use APIs to communicate to improve the customer experience. So listen to this one. 66% of customers are willing to pay for a better customer experience. That is simply amazing. So regardless of using NDC or not, I would say that that APIs in the airline space are up there as to what really matters the most in the airline industry and in the resellers of travel as well. The opportunities are just endless of all the, many unorchestrated communications that we see today and the broken processes to actually improve. There are so many areas that can change for the better. Like, I would like to see airline to airline payments. That's horrendously antiquated. Payments in general, irregular operations. But I could spend, easily 2 hours with you guys to list all the improvement areas and what can be done in this space. But most importantly, the customer expectations have changed today. And that is, I really think, thanks to the pandemic in many ways. So the customers have started asking, why are the airline processes so cumbersome? So my personal belief is that we are at the cusp of transformation. And the opportunities for you guys to develop and improve this industry has never, ever been greater and more exciting. But my word of advice to you is to ask yourself, what is really important? What matters? Isn't it the customer expectation or the customer experience that matters? And don't focus too much on whether it's NDC or not. Remember, it's just the standard, and focus on the goals in general for the customer experience. So those are the benefits I've listed of NDC. And I hope this has given you a picture into this airline area that is so much talked about and has been talked about for 10 years now. So I wish to thank you very much for your time and to take time to listen to this. I put my contact details, fact sheet for you here first before my contact details. To summarize, like I said, 66% are willing to pay for a better experience. 85% of the airlines are unhappy with their website. 10% of corporate customers, only 10% book hotels with a travel management company. 65 billion is the value, and 4 airlines made more than 50% of net profits in 2020. So I'll move on to my contact details, and thank you very, very much.
And yeah, thanks a lot for sharing the views, especially highlighting the challenges and the benefits on that FNDC. So, two questions. So, one is you referred to the GDS, right? From my understanding, they are the Amadeus and the Sabres of the world. So,
yes, there were only really 4 GDSs, 4 global distribution systems, and that's Amadeus, Sabre, Travelport, and then, of course, in China, there's TravelSky.
So why are there no more? I mean, very few players. So these 4, and no, I mean, a lot of industries across the world has seen a huge disruption by way of entry by a new player, a tech-enabled player who uses the latest set of technologies, uses APIs, everything. So why have this industry not seen such a thing?
I think that, there are many reasons, but historically it comes down to the airlines being hosted on the same platforms. And like I mentioned, these platforms actually own the distribution chain as well. So, they own all of it. And to move towards an arena like we've talked about with APIs and direct communication, is proving quite challenging in an industry that is not, that doesn't make that much money. So, as I mentioned, profit margins are low for airlines, approximately between 3 to 5%. So it's expensive to make new moves.
Right. So, I add on to that. So, this IATA brings together all the airlines, right? I mean, probably the low cost, barring the
No,
low cost guy, right?
no, they
Oh,
don't. There are approximately in the world, it depends on how you look at it, but let's say there's 800 airlines in the world. The IATA members are 300. So typically the low cost airlines are not IATA members.
okay, right. But can't IATA bring out? Are there anything compelling IATA not to bring out any, a specific deadline towards an NDC implementation or taking the lead in terms of bringing in a standards?
Yes, IATA, like the industry bodies, typically, historically, have always been for standards. I mean, ATPICO, another industry body, is also working for the common industry standards for the industry to communicate in one way, right? So I guess that, the hope is always that they take the lead and then more will follow. That is the goal of it. Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay. Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure, hosting you here, here at API Days, Dubai and Middle East. Looking forward to, interacting further and probably hosting you next year in person at the physical event.
Oh, thank you so much. I look forward to it. And I would love to talk some more about retailing and retailing opportunities, because there are many. Like, I hope the audience got that message, that the opportunities have never been bigger.
Yes.
Thank you so much for hosting me.
Yeah. Thank you. Joining us next is Aslam Mohammed, Managing Director at Netcon Global Technologies. He will be focusing on the topic of leveraging APIs for aviation.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Prashant, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see your slide. So, stage is yours.
Okay, great. Prashant, only one request I have. There is a video embedded there. If you don't get a sound and video, just raise your hand or let me know. I will speak as you go on. It's about a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Sure.
I think it's a good session soon after the NDC, where Anne was mentioning about the APIs and how APIs can help airlines to use non-aero areas into the airline revenues. It was a very interesting one. I think I'll build on to that. So what I'll do is, instead of jumping there straight away into the what APS could help in aviation, I will show you one a real life a real life use case which actually used APIs to gain the momentum and change the way travel happens in a particular airport. So let's get into that. So we all know what happened in the pandemic, and this refers to an Indian airport, and happened to be heading IT there at that time in Bangalore airport. And in India suspended all domestic flights, and like elsewhere happened in the world, many places, and aviation put to full stop. The whole industry of industry, particularly airlines and airports, were all confused, including the government itself. What to do, what not to do, how to go about, when to resume the flights back, what kind of precautions which taken, and what is right, what is wrong, and what would save, what could create pandemic more troublesome. It was very, very frustrating to everyone, and particularly the people at executive level in the all industry. One side you see the revenues draining, other side you see you can't even take a flight, can't operate anything. It was all frustrating everywhere. So there was a new normal had come in. We all knew nothing new here right now, but it was a new normal at that time when you talk about 2 years ago. So everywhere there was SOPs coming out, everything was changing, ever-changing guidelines. Even government couldn't, all the governments, not only just Indian government, governments couldn't fathom the depth of the problem. If you see, there's a short 2 dates here. On May 21st, Government of India declares that domestic air travel will start from May 25th, given 4 days, a gap of it. Prior to that, they let the others know it, the particular airports and airlines, but it was all together about not more than about 10 to 12 days. So all things are new. If you look at here, everything was new. The guidelines were new, and there was everywhere puts do's and don'ts. We all traveled. We know what happened to in the airports, even including the other modes of transport. Apart from mask, sanitization, social distancing, contactless, everything came to picture. So now, how did we react to it? There is everybody reacted in one fashion, that they started putting things into people, and they started looking at how to handle the movement of the passengers without having to touch the people. Handshake. So, but at Bangalore, we took it a bit differently. We said we'll go to the technology to make use of the contactless experience and bring a difference in the whole journey itself. This is a kind of, to be precise, this photo, what is appearing here, had appeared on the day of resuming in the Future Travel Experience magazine, which is globally well recognized as a measure for the customer experience and the travel. So this is this. Hope you are able to hear the audio. This is the experience. What has changed? It's about a couple of minutes video, a self-explanatory video. You could see it and see what has changed in here, and you can see how technology has been utilized here. Now this whole thing interlinked to the backend systems of airlines and airports. The whole kiosk is contactless now. Everything he does in his mobile phone, all through technology. Printing the back tag as well, and he'll use his own self back tag. Everywhere you can see contactless, all using the only scans. See, as it goes, even the security guys use the technology there. If you have traveled domestically in Bangalore, you can see still this is still all in operations now, in more advanced stage now. Even at the boarding gate, everything is contactless. We created a different experience for the journey for the customers. So this is a real life experience if you look at here. And but you know, the complex ecosystem was there to integrate now. It's so easy to look at it. Oh, what's good. But look at the background. You have the passengers here who come in there. This is the airport. Airport has its own systems, airport has its own procedures, airport has its own compliances. And the security agencies are there. They'll not let you easily move unless you comply to them. And they need to ensure the identity is done rightly, right flight is there. And handling agents who handle the flights. And then the civil aviation ministry changing the rules. And so many airlines, these are all Indian airlines, I just brought it to show it for the context. All these Indian airlines fly from Bangalore. All these have to be brought on board. And obviously the large players, I think in fact Prashant asked a question about your GDSs and your players in airline. These are the people which are very key players. Navitas, Amadeus, Sita, Sabre. You have to bring them on board. And in all this to be done in 2 weeks' time. We could do it leveraging APIs. If APIs had not been there, this would have been not possible at all. So we leveraged APIs as much as possible, the existing APIs with all the systems, the integrators, and also we created a few more APIs. We brought in the new tools and some of the scanning equipment. And during the lockdown time, you can imagine all this happened lockdown time. People are working remotely and from home, and so only few people are allowed with the security passes. This is all we could do because of API leveraging it. So APIs bring in enormous benefit in integrating solutions, integrating things, and moving and giving the right outcomes for the business, and particularly in aviation. So in 2 weeks' time, whatever you did it, what was the outcome impact for the business? If you look at here, I've shown 3 ways. That the video, what you saw it right now, had a 415 million views. Sorry, 415,000 views. This is not a pop show, not a pop singer singing, not any movie here, popular movie. It is a functional system of an airport, and you found so many people viewing it, and that shows then how it was clicked, and all largely at the same time, 2 years, in a whole world was watching it. And the Ministry of Aviation, the minister himself, quoted this as the one of the technologies we should take forward. And he did it on 26th May. If you recall, 25th May was the day when the flight started. That means we were up and running with all the things are running on the day of the first flight restart. And he quoted on that, said this is the right thing to go forward for all the industry. And a global recognition from the industry itself. As I mentioned, Future Travel Experience is a magazine, and now it is a conference setup for the travel experience for the airlines and airports. And they had identified 13 trends which would change the recovery of industry in 2021, which is still happening in 2022 now. And the first technology they mentioned was contactless technology. And in the first paragraph of that, they mentioned Bangalore Airport. This is how we got it, our place into the industry, appreciation of governments and public, which is how the whole Bangalore Airport moved. And Bangalore Airport since then, for the last 2 years, had been voted as the best airport in the Southeast Asia, and for its customer service. One of them is this particular technology what is played there. Hope it's making sense there. So this is what in a use case I wanted to show it to you and see what APIs could do. APIs can do, could do, and we can make use of as a technology experts, as a business domain functional experts. It requires bit of a thinking, bit of a planning, bit of doing it, and a handshake across the collaborating with the entities, intra and inter, for a business. Okay, I'll now touch upon the APIs in the aviation business landscape itself. Just to give you a flavor of it, I had worked across the aviation. I have worked across the airlines. I worked across the cargo side of the airline, worked across the retail side of the airline, and the airports, and ground handling, and also the travel agencies. So I have seen the business landscape across the domains, and also the kind of systems and the kind of regulations are there. So what I believe from the business perspective, from the aviation business perspective, these are the areas where APIs can bring in the benefits. Revenue enablers, obviously, everybody wants revenues to grow up, particularly post-pandemic now. People are looking for how to grow the revenue. It's not just the revenue, also the bottom line, because revenue is only one component. Bottom line is a more important factor, particularly if you look at what the fuel prices are there. And I do remember Anne talking about, while she's talking about the NDCs, saying that airlines have lower side of single-digit profit margins, a very low margin business. And then customer delight, obviously, and everybody wants the customer to be repeat customer, and the airlines want loyal customers. And now airports are competing. In Middle East, where we are in Dubai now, Dubai competes with Doha, and both compete with Abu Dhabi. And now Saudi is saying we're not far behind. We want to bring our customer delay to our airports. People do transit through us. So if you look at here, the main transit hubs in the world are Dubai, Doha, London, Hong Kong, Singapore, and some of these, to name a few, are Seoul. And if you see, all these airports are the ones which are voted the best airports in the world. Many of them have these Skytrax ratings of 5-star ratings. And these are the airlines which compete also for the Skytrax awards as the best airline in the world. That is always Singapore Airlines, Cathay, Qatar Airways. The 3 airlines always on top. If you look at top 10 airlines, 7 to 8 will be from the Asian perspective. It's all customer delight. That is the key. This thing. Industry collaboration, obviously. So NDC is one classic example which Anne was talking about, and IATA is another one which brings industry collaboration. The number of collaboration can happen within industry. I'll just walk through in a minute there. On operational efficiency, which everyone is looking for the bottom line to grow. What can be done? Said and done, across this, data intelligence and AI/ML play a key role which APIs can leverage to bring in the actionable intelligence and actionable AI, which can help airlines and airports act and then bring the benefits to the concerned businesses. Let's look at each one. I'll spend a couple of minutes before we wind up. So particularly on the revenue enablers. See, all airline booking platforms, which are all e-commerce platforms. Every airline has its own platform and also work with OTAs. That is Expedia, mytravel.com. There's so many of them there, and TripAdvisor. Everybody is OTA now, including Google itself is OTA now. So if you look at the airline booking platforms and OTAs, which airlines can integrate with so many other functionalities they bring in there through APIs and get the benefit for everybody. The whole OTA concept itself on APIs. And now everybody wants classic example, which Anne was mentioning about NDC. NDC is the new distribution channel, is all on APIs. What does that do, the new distribution channel for the airline? To say that apart from flying alone, you get these comfort factors or plus factors by flying by airline. Along with that, people want to make use of ancillary revenues, they call it, non-aero revenues. That is, I should be able to sell insurances, taxis, holidays. Where I fly, I work with my tour operators there, fly, sell holidays. Every airline wants to do this and get some mileage out of it. And some of the airlines target this to be good 4 to 5% of their whole revenue, particularly low-cost airlines. And they also sell the retail F&B in their in-flight. All this happens through the APIs, using APIs. And code share alliance partners. Every airline wants a code share. For example, classic example, the Qatar Airways has code share with Indigo, and same way with Emirates has another code share with SpiceJet, and Air India is part of Star Alliance. Just talk to Indian market alone. If you go into the Europe market, the Star Alliance, Sky Alliance, and One World are very common. And these things, if you look at here, what's happening there? They want to share the information about their flight, their loyalties. Sometimes they building the prices by joining the two legs together and benefit it. All this can happen through handshake of information through APIs. And Prashant asked this good question to Anne. GDSs. Why only this Sabre, Amadeus, and Travelport are so popular as GDSs? What's happening? Obviously, they charge enormous arm and leg to the airlines. So most of the LCCs avoid GDS. They go direct, or through some agents, but they go direct. Now the traditional airlines also following the bypassing them. Can I go direct to the agents? Can I go direct to the customer? Direct to customer, they anyway go through the booking platform. Even to the agent, travel agents, they want to bypass the GDS. This is there is one of the service providers called FairLogics is very, very popular in that. So this all happens through APIs. Payment gateways, we all know, whether it's airline or hotel, anywhere, or even your e-commerce channels. Payment gateways are done through APIs. Yeah. This is not only passenger side, air cargo. Air cargo has similar revenue enablers, and particularly post-pandemic, you have to remember, prior to pandemic, the air cargo used to be generally about 9 to 11% for an airline of a hybrid airline where the passenger cargo both are there. And some airlines had up to 15-16% of the whole revenue coming from cargo side. But with the pandemic coming in, the cargo component has gone much higher. And some of the airlines like Qatar Airways, Emirates, or the Asiana, they're gone up to 20% as well. And the yield is very high, unlike passenger side. Yield is extremely high. So air cargo has a lot of APIs integrating with supply chain. Customer delight. Self-service at any point in time is the main thing. And particular self-service with the personalization is the talk of the day. You target the customer with his personal interest. So all this can happen through APIs. Loyalty is a phenomenal API components. Not only just for the loyalty mile creation, redemption across third parties. You can use the loyalty of a airline ticket miles, go to the hotel and use it, or go to the restaurant and use it, and vice versa. Yeah. And providing information fingertips to the customer delight. Baggage. So many of us know my baggage will be on this belt, or my flight will arrive at this gate. Information comes to your fingertips through messaging, through WhatsApp, through on the website. This is the customer delight. You can make customer feel that airline is treating you as a star or an privileged customer. And providing touch at all touch points, including in the air, not just on the ground at home, but in the air as well. In in-flight entertainment, APS can be linked there, quite a bit of it. Now, many of you know there is a Wi-Fi available there, and they also airlines make use of it to cross-sell. And obviously service quality, whole thing goes to service quality, whether it's an airport or airline, the service quality is measured and the awards are provided on that. So it is a very important factor of it. The data intelligence part is a continuous part across every area. You can use that. Obviously industry collaboration. An airport, so whoever is in airport has some kind of experience. You see, airport is not just an airline, not an airport alone. You find ground handling people who are on the ground, like in Dubai, you see Danata, and yes, elsewhere you'll find other people. Then you find the people on cargo side. You will people on caterers, the people on the fuel, and if you can keep on adding like this, 40 to 50 players are there, including security. So now if flight gets delayed or flight gate changes, the whole thing will change. So if you use APIs to communicate that information across the industry players and also decisions, if you use this platform of communication to make decisions using APIs, is a phenomenal service quality improvement and phenomenal cost saving improvement for each one of the entities, and obviously the faster turnaround for everybody. And industry, IATA industry has come out with initiatives like OneID. OneID is a one identification stands for. I just use my passport or I use my one of the identification this thing. I walk through from New York to Timbuktu. Whether I go through any number of border security points, airline security checkpoints, all those things should be walked through. I don't need to have to produce my ID every time, open it up and show it. My passport or my face or my ticket should be ID. These are standards coming in. Generally, it's going to biometric facial recognition here. Use face as a passport. This is the one which is industry is promoting it now, and most of the people who participate there. All it will happen to APIs. Sharing the information. One record is a similar thing for the cargo side of it. As the freight moves from one end to another end of the from the shipment to the consignee, shipper to consignee, all information can be shared and in standard formats. This is where Anne was telling about The standardization is very critical here. That is where issues come up. Participation. MRO is maintenance, repair, and overhauling. This is for who is in aviation. No, MRO is the most expensive part of the airline operations, other than fuel. And you manage the aircrafts there, you manage the spare parts there, you manage the leasing options there. All these are very, very expensive affairs. And these ones, when they come into the picture, and if they integrate, Boeing and Airbus, classic example of OEMs, your Rolls-Royce and airlines and leasing company, they can exchange the information among themselves. They can save enormous on the maintenance side and the spare side. Alliances, we talked about alliances now. A minute ago, talked about Star, Sky, One World. Alliances, they not only just share the information about passengers and revenue, there are forums, they share about these common buying, common loyalty, etc., etc.
Yeah. Aslam, we are now running short of time. So,
okay, fine.
I'll just pose one question to you, which came. So, you have been on the different parts of the aviation industry, airport, airlines, everything. So, and so from looking from the airport point of view, what are those three changes in the IT side of airlines that you would like to see, which will make the life easier for everybody, for all the stakeholders concerned?
See, I can go back to the quick one, Prashant, on the time frame. I think you got a couple of minutes to just quickly cover that. It's 30 seconds.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so basically, if you look at here, digital transformation, Industry 4.0. For this to succeed, APIs are very critical. Without using APIs, you will not be able to do any digital transformation across the aviation. And the key ones are the security, sustainability. Another two aspects are coming to airline, apart from the customer experiences, which everybody knows of it. This security is because that's where you heard of 1ID. Because if the more and more people traveling across now, the borders become very, very important. And then sustainability, because all airlines are looking at the green. The green has become a very, very common factor of it now, measuring carbon footprint. And the carbon footprint is given a lot of this thing for both airlines and airports. And these are few things are coming up. Only digital transformation across the airline domains, whether it is a retail, airline, cargo, and handling, and the sustainability and the security. I'll stop at that. And for everything, there are technology solutions coming in, and innovation and digital transformation the key now, and disruption.
Right. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Aslam, for joining us here at Apidays Dubai and Middle East, and sharing your views on how showing us that glimpse of how the change has happened by taking a real example. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Great, Prashant. Thanks for that. Thanks for providing the opportunity to speak to Apidays. Thank you.
Thank you. Joining us next is Patrick Bros, Senior Expert on API and Data Modeling Design at Apidays. His topic is, what are smart APIs? How to apply them in travel, insurance, and banking. Hi, welcome, Patrick.
Thanks. I'm very happy to be the next speaker after Aslam about airlines. So today, in fact, I will speak about API, but not as just transport data, but how an API could be smart. And then after we see together what are the definition of what is smart APIs, how to apply them to travel industry, to insurance, and banking or payment. So first of all, I would like to take inspiration about something that happened around to us about flip phone. So flip phone, are they data-centric? Not really, just to exchange text or phone calls or voice call. Are they simple to use? Or look about the keyboard, the screen as that kind of device, not super simple to use. Autonomous, but in fact, there is no big CPU, no big memory, nothing related to some sensor to be connected and having some interactive, let's say, interactive application. Of course, there is some application in that kind of phone historically with, let's say, a calendar, calculator, but very limited. And what about the concept of to receive some notification or exchange, interact alert with the user? So, okay, this is basically a way to describe an anti-pattern of what is not smart. What is smart? It's not smart. So what is smart? What do we have something smart today? But in fact, we have what we call smart devices. So devices are, let's say, data-centric. So like your iPad, which is or your smartphone, your smartwatch, perhaps your smart car. So basically here you see some device that help you to exchange some data, some event together, or even inside between application, you can exchange some data. And after that, what you like is really the concept of smart usage. And this is the scope of what is smart. So let's see together to take those 6 definitions of what is smart and how could you consider that now the next generation of API will be smart. So let's start to give a new name with that will be, let's say, the future of our, let's say, API days. We'll speak now about smart APIs. So first of all, let's present myself. I'm Patrick Pross, working in Amadeus, and I am an expert on API design and data model. And my role is really here inside Amadeus as an API evangelist to help our API designer to design APIs for our product. And then to help them to say, okay, what are APIs becoming, when you have foundation which are now data-centric, to become smart. So let's see together the API designer road trip for an API. So before to that, I will tell you the context of this presentation. I will use a real example that we did recently. And what are the challenges of an API designer? And the challenge of an API designer is to build, let's say, something elegant, future-proof, in a minimum of time. So let's see an example of an internal API that we designed inside Amadeus during the pandemic. And I think it's a good illustration about something and it was also related to the previous presentation, where we have to provide a safe travel application to help our customers, so airline or travel agency, to speed up or let's say to secure the access of the airport, but be at home. So basically on the website to verify that you have all the documents, all your health documents valid to enter the airport, and then to do all the boarding pass and bag tag process. That could be, let's say, of course, touchless or not. But if your documents are not valid, you don't need to go to the airport. You will be, let's say, rejected. So to put this into this context, we created the widget, which is available on the website of the company, to verify that all your documents are valid before to come. So this is basically the context that I will explain how this application has been built, and I will show you the API designer journey to build a smart API, and how the concept of smart API help us to design quickly an API. So basically, the scope is really to this self-travel widget, where in fact will be connected to a backend and to do some health documentation verification for the trip. So a smart device is something that we see. It should be data-centric. It should be simple to use, having a kind of autonomy, to be connected, interactive, and potentially able to send and receive notification. So what is the definition that could be applied to a smart API? But in fact, if you do the parallel, an API should be resource-oriented, having a concept of state, having a concept of controllers, hypermedia, some webhook, and event-driven. So when you speak about hypermedia, remember the Richardson maturity model. The level 3 is when you start to use hypermedia. So let's see together those definitions one by one and how it has been implemented in the scope of safe travel. So first of all, what is resource-oriented? So let me explain you in few seconds what is the concept of resource-oriented. And in fact, it's basically quite easy for us to explain when you are a developer. Historically, this mindset has been changed by developer 20 years ago. So basically, when you go from procedural programmation to object-oriented. But in fact, the move, the new mindset for API is exactly the same. historically, we were more SOAP-oriented with a procedural approach, where basically you have the functionality which is described by a verb, and potentially the data that you manipulate. Of course, some data will be part of the parameter. But when you are object-oriented, what you do, you first focus on the object and you describe your object. So you put a context. And it starts to be very, very interesting because you have the context where you work, and then you can apply some functionality on top. So this is something which is having a kind of autonomy. And it will be a kind of the mother of design of any, let's say, new generation of API. Even if you speak about REST-JSON, GraphQL, Async API, Open API, the concept of a mode to model your data is ultra important. So next step. So this is the baseline, resource-oriented. We are data-centric. So in fact, when you speak about data, what is interesting is the fact to have a state. And this is also the foundation of REST, is how to explain the state and what is the value of the state. The state is basically allow you to show you that you have something which is static and become dynamic. And this is basically the definition of a representation state transfer in REST. And how could we use that during the verification of your else document with the safe travel widget? So in fact, you consider that you have a resource, which is a third-party verification having an ID and a status. Okay, this is a resource. It's kind of job to help you to do a verification. And why a third party is because, in fact, inside Amadeus, we have no certification to verify directly the document itself. So basically, we delegate the verification to someone to a third party, which is Ever9. And in fact, in your API, we create a post API to create this verification process attached to some else document related to a traveler. So this is, you see, in the past, you start to see, let's say, the hierarchy and the semantic of the context. And basically, the API will help you to launch a process to verify the else document. So we delegate the process to a third-party API, and basically, the state of our process is ongoing. Of course, there is some, let's say, interaction with the user, perhaps to scan some QR code, to upload document, and so on. So basically, you have a process which is ongoing, and what you expect at the end is to have something which is validated. So basically, when you check the state of the verification process, at the end, you can see that it is verified or not. So the status of your resource helps you to simulate this concept of state. So now, basically, it's very simple. You have a resource and you can visualize it and you know where you are. And we started with the concept of job, and this is one of the most advanced concepts that we created inside Amadeus is, of course, when you speak about REST and REST API, people are speaking about, okay, you have to manipulate a resource. Okay, so a resource could be a health document, a COVID-19 area report, or else path. But in fact, okay, you have what we call CRUD operation, where like a create, read, update, delete. So you can manipulate those resources. But at the end, how to handle such complex processes, which are the verification, okay? And in fact, what we did, we invented the concept of controller, and the controller is here to manipulate your resource in a very clear windows, and you have the scope, which is very clear. You do a verification, and you don't do something else. And this verification is becoming a job attached to your resource, and it could be considered as a sub-resource. So the concept of controller is here really to enrich as a satellite your resource with plenty of pseudo API related to your microservices. So basically, you see the new generation, of API which have some microservice attached to the resource. So here you have a kind of autonomy because you can add plenty of controller around your resource. Remember, I started to speak about hypermedia. Hypermedia is, in let's say, the most advanced concept in Richardson maturity model, where you can provide some links between resources. And this is exactly what is a web. When you look about the web is working alone, and you have, let's say, a link between pages or between forms to help you to discover what are the next steps. But in fact, you can follow this process and do the same with APIs. How? So let's imagine that you have to upload some document to be verified during your health verification. So basically, you provide your health document, but in fact, in some countries, some area, you have to upload some other document to justify your identity, to provide a COVID-19 test in the same time. So basically, you start a process, but the process is stopped and it's still ongoing, and you need to do something else. And how to provide a link to say, okay, now I need to upload some other documents. So you have an array of documents attached to the verification process. And then you can have a status of your process saying, okay, hey guys, you have some missing document. And then those documents should be, let's say, uploaded. And please upload a document having a validity of less than 72 hours. So you see, you can, with the concept of hyper schema, which is the most advanced concept in JSON schema organization, where you associate to your resource some link with other APIs. And this is really a way to do a next step, saying to the user, hey guys, you start a verification process related to your travel. You give me your health document, but I need to attach some other document. So please upload those documents via these APIs. So the UI can interact with the user, and which is really the concept of 8OS, where you have the, let's say, hypertext engine state to manipulate and the relationship between several resources to help the user to discover, let's say, the flow or the process. So here we have the concept of hyperschema, and if you look about the Open API, you have also now the concept of webhook. So what is the concept of webhook? You remember when we started the verification, we delegate this verification to a third party, which is Evernyme, and we receive OK. But it is asynchronous. So the concept is, okay, how to receive, let's say, a OK, which on something that has been started. And this is nice because you have a concept of webhook, and then we have the opportunity to define to Evernyme a specific, dynamically a specific endpoint where they can send us the update to the verification. So basically, we subscribe to them to receive some event on our system. So basically, we define some endpoint that we call a traveler health document third-party verification /ID /Evernyme event. So basically, for this particular verification process, they are able to come and to give us some update on the process of the verification. And potentially here, you can, in the UI, you can implement a kind of progress bar depending of the state that you receive. And this is super nice for the user to understand where you are in your process. So this is the concept of webhook, where you define a dedicated endpoint related to a specific resource. And we can imagine that this one is more a fictive approach where you can combine the concept of Open API with asynchronous API. So imagine that you have, and it's something that we have also inside Amadeus, another API, which is now, this one public, which is duty of care. And thanks to our partner Riskline, where in fact we have a collaboration with them to produce some COVID-19 area report. When you say area, it could be a country, city, or region. And the idea is potentially to imagine in the future that this, the condition of a specific country or specific region will evolve during the time. And how could be automatically updated about that kind of evolution. Potentially, you can imagine to have a specific controller that we call monitors. So basically, you can monitor a specific resource. So you can let any user to subscribe to this resource for a specific country to monitor the evolution. And potentially, depending of the subscription state, you will receive email or SMS or potentially, let's say, alert in your application. So this is basically the ultimate vision of APIs, or smart APIs, when you combine event-driven architecture and query reply via Open APIs. So this is really the context to explain you, let's say, what is smart and how it has been applied to APIs. And then now my question is, okay, how to apply? We apply that to travel, but all of those concepts, this journey, how it could be applied to payment or insurance industry. So let's have a look a little specific path to explain you. And here I will explain you something that I started to show you just before, but more in detail, how to put in place a concept of asynchronous controller. So asynchronous controller is basically that you don't have an answer yet of something. So let's imagine that you have a travel order, which is the business of Amadeus, to create some travel reservation, and you have a specific offer to an insurance, and you basically would like to buy an insurance associated to your travel. And during this process of travel order, at one period of time, you need to pay to continue the flow. And during the payment process, you will start to create an authorization. Okay, imagine you have a 3D secure, so you have to enter a code or let's say a validation of your mobile to validate the payment. So basically, you start to have a asynchronous process. So you can imagine that the first step of the payment record. So basically, you will create a new resource during the authorization, and during this authorization, a new resource will be attached. A sub resource will be attached to your travel order, and this resource, which is called payment record, will be created, but the state is still ongoing because you need to interact with as a 3D secure to enter some information about the authorization, and of course there is some delay. So basically, this record which is attached to your travel order will help you to keep the visibility where you are in the process of the payment. And typically, you can visualize this record, and thanks to HTTP status, thanks to the e-tag, you can step by step visualize the state of this resource, and potentially this resource has not yet modified. And at one period of time, you consider that, in fact, the change of this state has been now okay. So basically, it's a kind of summary about what we see just before, where you combine everything, the state, the concept of controller, and the concept of relationship between resources. So this is the ultimate way to implement the concept of a smart API during the insurance or payment industry. So this is the vision where we are now in API. It's no more to convey data. It's now where you can basically help the user, thanks to the REST approach, to document and to provide some free review flow. So to summarize quickly before the question, I know that you are arriving to the questions. So basically, the secret of the design smart API are really that. The modularity, and to be data-centric, to follow the state representation, to be autonomous with controllers, to be connected with hypermedia and hyperschema, to have the concept of webhook, to receive some interaction of event, and of course, the ultimate things will be to associate OpenAPI to Async API. So I'm very happy to have presented this use case during the pandemic, and it was very important for us to provide that kind of product, where we verify more than 15 million of documents in 1 year, and this is one of the success story that we can share with you. So if you have questions, you are welcome.
Yeah, yes, Patrick, there are some questions. So both the previous speakers referred to Amadeus as the large GDS player, with a huge market share in the airline industry, right? So just wanted to know, GDS is Amadeus started as a GDS, and it's also an IT provider, IT solutions provider. But where is it headed? What is the next step for Amadeus?
Yes, of course, we are. It's true that historically we are seen as a GDS, but let's say we evolve during those 20 years, because APIs for us is part of our DNA. We build APIs in 25 years to be interconnected with airline, with airport, with a hotel provider, with the car rental system and cruise system. So this is, let's say, the kernel of Amadeus was a GDS. But in fact, we diversified, and now we are IT providers for airlines, for airports. And what could be the next step? This is a good question. In fact, the idea is to become an open platform. So thanks to those concepts of API, Amadeus will be a technical hub for the travel industry. And we see that with the pandemic, where we have to learn some new concepts, like the health industry, Potentially you know the concept of traveler identification, sorry, to speed up the traveler experience. So yes, the next step are really to focus on the traveler experience and to become an open platform to let our partners to bring more data or more functionality themselves on our system.
Okay, yeah, sure. So the next one, so how do you see the API design in the future? What is it going to be?
You see, the concept of SOAP with a function was, let's say, the vision in the past. Now, for sure, REST API is clearly the new baseline. It's a new mother for me. It's a new mother of APIs. So for us, we have to be REST oriented. Why? Because we'll become data centric. Now everything will be related to the data, and to create the glue between the developers, the business people, analytics, machine learning, everything will be related to the data before the functionality. So yes, for me, the API design will become, let's say, very data-centric, and potentially what are let's say the next challenge, it's something that we see to work more agile and so on, in a minimum of time, is to provide on the platform all the tools to follow the principle of API design first. So the idea is really to design APIs before to code, and maybe even to test them before to code. And this could be very powerful because imagine you have several partners to work with, you provide the API contract, you provide the concept of mock-up server, they can play, they can give you some feedback of the APIs, and you have even not started to code. So basically, your code will be really aligned to the, let's say, the final requirement, to discover the requirement. If you want, I can provide you a link about a talk that I did with during a Microsoft build, where I explain how Amadeus started to do first API to API first, to API to first API to API first.
Okay, yeah, sure. That will be a good addition to the deck as a as an information source. Yeah, great. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that, and thanks a lot for joining us here at Apidays Dubai and Middle East, and sharing your views on about the smart APIs. Thanks a lot.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for your attention and your invitation. I appreciate it.
That brings to an end the segment 2 in the stage 1 of API Days Dubai and Middle East. We'll have a short break of around 16-17 minutes. I think we have already overshot 2-3 minutes. So we'll join back here for a couple of sessions on the topic of API ecosystem, and on the stage 2 we'll focus on the API lifecycle. During the break, please do take time out to visit the partners booth. We are, as we have been saying, we are running a treasure hunt. The clues, the answers for that you can get only if you visit the partner booths. So please do ensure to visit the partner booths, learn more about their offerings, and also play the treasure hunt. Thank you.